Now back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Garden Radio Show with your hosts, Joey and Holly Baird.
Welcome back to the Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener Radio Show. So happy you have joined us today. When it comes to the WisconsinVegetableGardener.com, your destination for all things gardening, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, social media, videos, and a whole lot more.
Well, we have author Niki Jabbour. She's an author and edibles expert from Halifax, Nova Scotia, who believes that a long winter shouldn't mean the end to a homegrown harvest. Her first book, The Year-Round Vegetable Gardener, was honored with the 2012 American Horticultural Society's Book Award, and her latest title, Groundbreaking Food Gardens, 73 Plants That Will Change the Way You Grow Your Garden, opens your eyes to an infinite number of tasty possibilities. Niki's next book will be coming out this year. She is also the host of The Weekend Gardener, heard throughout Eastern Canada. Welcome to the show, Niki.
Hey, guys. Joey and Holly, thank you so much for having me. It's great to talk to you guys.
Well, thank you for taking time out of your busy day and calling us from north of the border, Canada, and to share some of your gardening wisdom with not only Holly and myself, but our listeners here in the Milwaukee area.
Well, I'm super excited to talk gardening. I mean, gosh, I will talk gardening anytime, and of course, this is the time of the year when we're all so itching to get out in the garden, and I'm actually looking at snow piles on my window right now, but it's starting to melt finally, so I'm hoping soon I'll be out and planting in the garden again.
Well, one of the biggest challenges in the northern gardeners like ourselves and you is the unpredictability of spring and fall. What have you found to be the most successful season extender that you've played around with and it worked very well for you?
Well, I mean, I have a whole bunch of different season extenders that I use because, of course, I am in Nova Scotia, Canada. I get snow. You know, again, here it is April 1st, and it's not an April Fool's Day joke, but we got like 6 inches of snow 2 days ago, which piled on top of a previous 6 inches of snow from a few days before. And our temperatures are finally starting to heat up, but there's quite a few season extenders I use that I can plant weeks and months earlier in the spring and harvest fall and in the winter. So my favorite one, of course, is the cold frame. Super simple, you know, easy to build. It's just a bottomless box with a clear top to capture solar energy. And it's amazing how much and how many different types of, you know, food crops that you can grow and harvest, you know, when it's not very nice outside. So cold frame would definitely be number one. And again, it's something that most people can build. Even if you don't have any handyman skills, you can even use like straw bales or cinder blocks. There's so many things to make the box of a cold frame. But I also use mini hoop tunnels. And this is the time of year I erected like little hoops, PVC hoops in the fall, just from like my local home improvement warehouse. And so they're up in my garden now, and I'm covering them with plastic, and they're pre-warming the soil for me. So I can start planting things now. Spinach, arugula, you know, lettuces, all those cold and cool season vegetables can be seeded now. Again, even though we have snow on the ground, as long as I can create a sheltered area, I can start those crops now.
Now, in your area, Nova Scotia, Canada,
there's a chemical ban where you cannot spray or use any chemicals. How do you successfully control bad bugs in the garden?
Well, you know, it's been, my goodness, it's been over 10 years since we've had a pesticide ban in place. So, yeah, that means there's no weed and feed. There's no Kill-X, there's no Roundup, there's no chemicals in your vegetable, your lawns, your flower gardens. You know, you can't just go out and buy Aznon or any other type of chemical that people used to use decades ago here. It is 100% organic, which is, when it first was announced, there was some panic. You know, people like their lawns here, too, and they were very worried about dandelions taking over the world. You know, all these bad bugs, the population's getting out of control. But what happened instead is that populations of good bugs increased as well as the bad bugs in the beginning, and a balance was formed. And we had more birds eating those bugs. So there wasn't really a noticeable difference, you know. So for me, I rely in my vegetable garden, and I have a big vegetable garden, I usually rely on a lot of pollen and nectar plants. I include zinnias and nasturtiums and sunflowers and lots of herbs that attract the good bugs, you know, to help maintain the populations of good bugs in my garden and eat the bad guys. So that's a big thing for me, the you know, attracting the beneficial insects. So that is the best way that I do, you know, help prevent bad bugs from taking over. But I also keep an eye on it. You know, I'm up in the garden all the time. If I see an outbreak of aphids or something, you know, or potato beetles or cabbage worms, which I can't stand, and I get a lot of slugs, you know, I hand pick. It's never actually been an issue. I've never had an issue that I can't deal with, either naturally by hand picking or with, you know, encouraging the good bugs to help out.
Now, you spoke about the expansion of your garden. Now, for most people here in Milwaukee, this is a very large number. You went from 2,000 square feet to 3,000 square feet. Why did you do this, and what was the consideration in making this expansion decision?
Well, my second book, Groundbreaking Food Gardens, I basically stocked 72 of my favorite gardeners from around North America and the UK, and I said, how do you do this? How do you grow food? What do you like to grow? Raised beds, containers. I wanted to know everything. And so after I wrote that book and it came out, I kept looking at my own garden, which had been in place for about 12 years, and I'm like, I think I can do better. So last spring, we bulldozed the garden site, literally, and I saved all my good soil, and we rebuilt from the ground up. So we built 20 new raised beds, and I included tunnels and vertical trellises and all these wonderful structures to grow things vertically and just to get the most out of my space. So that book and talking to all those gardeners was kind of what really sparked me to make a change in my garden. And, I got to say, the 20 raised beds, I filled them pretty quickly. And I'm thinking this year of adding maybe another 5 or 6 more.
You're crazy, Nikki.
Listen, I know that, for goodness sakes. But if people want to see the picture of my design, it's on my Savvy Gardening website. But, yeah, I just really like, food gardening. It's my thing. And, we grow most of our own food, every day of the year. We can harvest from our garden. And I just really wanted to go bigger, and I wanted to go bigger in a way that I could garden intensively, boost my yield, and use up every square inch of my growing space.
And I'm sure if you could go another 3,000 feet, you would.
I totally would. There's actually a lawn, a clover lawn, right beside the vegetable garden, and I'm thinking, I could kind of take over a little bit of that. The kids are a little big for soccer now. Maybe I should just inch over and plant some garlic over there and slowly take it over.
You don't have to justify any of that to us.
I know it, Holly. I know. Thank goodness.
Both of us being in colder climates, what is a plant that you have struggled with in trying to grow, and how did you overcome it?
That's a really good question. I mean, I like to push my boundaries, of course, like I think most gardeners do. I am Zone 5, USDA Zone 5, here in Nova Scotia. I really like to grow things like artichokes, but I also love to grow crops like global crops, and that's the subject of my next book. A lot of the international unusual vegetables. So, I start off slow trying this, Indian cucumber or, this melon from Italy and saying, well, I don't know if I can do it, but, if I can, then it'll be a great success. And so I play with a lot of vegetables, and I've had so much success. Artichokes at first were difficult, and then I discovered, the short season variety, and so we harvest, armfuls of artichokes every year. So that was a challenge for me, but now, again, I don't automatically assume I can't do it. I want to try it. And of course, using my season extenders like mini hoop tunnels for melons and, a lot of warm season crops definitely helps protect them from, unexpected frost or cold weather, and helps me grow things with a slightly larger season.
Now, you spoke about, we talked about you went to 3,000 square feet and you did raised beds.
Yeah.
Now, what was the decision that you chose to go raised beds instead of using the native soil that you had there?
Well, it is partly the native soil because all the old soil in my garden I scooped up, and it has been soil, of course, that I'd been working for 12 years with compost and seaweed and chopped leaves and all this, so I saved all that. The native soil, though, to keep using more of my native soil, it's pretty infertile, and we have very low pH soil here, so I have to add lots of lime to it. But raised beds, for me, it's just such an easy way to garden. I garden every square inch of a raised bed. The soil is never walked upon, so it doesn't get compacted. It doesn't invite weeds as easily as, traditional row gardens would. It warms up early in the spring. I'm getting a little older, and it's better on my back and my knees. I think it looks fantastic because I think a food garden should look, beautiful and be a very beautiful, relaxing space that you like to work in. So I find my vegetable garden is very ornamental. So there's many benefits to raised beds, and I just, I've been gardening in raised beds for years, but they were always no boundary around them. They were just free-formed. So now that I have wooden raised beds, it just changed my garden game completely. And I was able to grow so much food, even in just a simple 4 by 10 foot bed. You can produce double the amount of food than you can in a traditional row garden by the square foot.
For listeners who would like to grow well into the winter but haven't, what is the biggest misconception you have found that causes people to fail?
That you can't do it. I think people are worried that, the cover of my first book is me in February outside in my garden, surrounded by snow, lifting up the cover of my cold frames, and then you can see there's dozens of varieties of salad greens and root crops in there that look perfectly green and healthy. And again, it gets, I don't know the Fahrenheit, but it gets to be minus 25, minus 30 here, Celsius in the winter. In Fahrenheit, that's just really, really cold. And again, I'm growing the right crops at the right time, so it's the cold season crops in the winter, with pairing them with simple season extenders like cold frames or mini hoop tunnels, and they do fantastic. So it's really not that difficult. A lot of people will see the cover of the book and they're like, okay, that's photoshopped. And when my publisher Story did the cover and put it together, I said, you can Photoshop my hair if you need to, but don't touch the vegetables because they have to look exactly as they do in my garden. And that is how it looks in the middle of the wintertime. You can lift it up and see all those beautiful green. Smells like spring. It's amazing. So I would say don't be afraid to try new things and don't be afraid to experiment in your garden.
Well, minus 25 Celsius is about negative 13 Fahrenheit for the Americans here. So that is very, very cold, yes.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very cold. And none of my structures are heated. I don't use any heating. It's all the sun. So.
Well, you talked about your new book coming out. When's that new book coming out, and what should we expect? Because your last two books were phenomenal. I'm expecting no less than in this book.
Oh, thank you, Joey. Well, I am so excited by this book. I mean, it's 3 years in the making, and it's, as I mentioned, it'll focus on all the unique, wonderful, global, international, unusual, heirloom, just awesome vegetables that I grow. I don't want to write a book that's already been written, so I'm always looking for different types of subject matter. And so I grow so many wonderful things in the garden, and we get to try so many great foods. And so that's what this one's going to be about. And I think it's going to be late 2017, probably like around Christmas. But, it's starting to be listed online now on Amazon and places like that. And the cover I just shared on Facebook this past week, which I'm super excited about because my publisher Story, they're amazing folks, and they have a great artistic, creative team, and I think they did a really great job on it.
Now, you've got the Year-Round Vegetable Gardener, Groundbreaking Food Gardens, and this book. Where can people find you on a regular basis? What location is the best for them to travel to?
Well, I am, of course, on all social media, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, all the time. And but other than that, my website is savvygardening.com, and it's a lot of information on food gardening, flower gardening, good bugs, all that sort of stuff, and some fun do-it-yourself ideas as well.
Well, Niki, so glad you've taken time to join us and our listeners to enlighten us a little bit more about extending our growing capabilities year-round, if not earlier and later in the season.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This has been such a treat to talk to you guys today.
Well, thank you, Niki.
And we'll be right back after this with your gardening questions. If you're in the Milwaukee or surrounding areas, just tune your radio to 860 AM or FM 106.5. You can also find links on our Facebook pages, The Wisconsin Vegetable Gardener and Home Canning. Our website, thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com, click on the radio tab at the top of the page, then click on the Listen Live button, and you'll have immediately access to our live program. Mobile devices work very well also. Go to your app store and download for free the TuneIn app or the Simple Radio app. Then search WNOV 860, save it to your favorites, and you can have access to our radio show live wherever you're at in the world. Our radio program will also have podcast replay under the radio tab several days following the live broadcast. You can find all of these links in the show notes below. Our show airs 9 to 10 a.m. Central Standard Time every Saturday, March through the end of October. And we want to thank our sponsors because without them, this would not be anywhere possible. You can find all of their links under the radio tab on our website at thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.
For more information, please visit thewisconsinvegetablegardener.com.